A daughter defended her mother, a housekeeper, from a cruel comment, but the reaction of the wealthy single father was completely unexpected. Secrets came to light, and their lives changed forever. A story that will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, and comment on where you are watching from. The heat of February weighed over New York like a suffocating blanket, and inside the imposing mansion in Brooklyn, the air conditioning struggled against the temperature nearing 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Richard Montgomery adjusted the knot of his Italian tie while watching the intense movement of Fifth Avenue through the panoramic window of his office. At 42, he had built a real estate empire that made his name whispered with respect and fear in the halls of Wall Street. Commercial buildings, luxury condominiums, shopping centers, everything bore his architectural signature and his relentless business rigor. "Mr. Montgomery?" The soft voice of Carmen Smith echoed through the slightly open office door. "Gabriel is home from school. I prepared lunch as requested." Richard didn't even look up from the laptop screen, where he was analyzing spreadsheets for a new project in Brooklyn. "Leave it on the table. He can serve himself. I have a conference call in 5 minutes." "Excuse me, sir." Carmen hesitated at the door, her delicate hands firmly holding a silver tray. "Gabriel seems a bit down today. Perhaps you could—" "Carmen." Richard's voice cut through the air like a cold blade. "You were hired to take care of the house and prepare meals. My son's education is my responsibility, understood?" The 45-year-old woman lowered her gaze, revealing long lashes that framed her almond-shaped eyes. Her Miami accent, always controlled, slipped through slightly. "Yes, sir. Sorry for the intrusion." Carmen Smith had entered the E. Montgomery's lives exactly 3 months ago, through an agency specializing in domestic staff for high-income families. Her references were impeccable, her elegant demeanor impressive, and there was something about the way she organized the house that brought a harmony the family hadn't known for years. Coming from Miami, she brought not only her refined domestic skills, but also an 8-year-old daughter named Lily, who often accompanied her during school breaks or when she had nowhere else to stay. "Mom?" Lily's high-pitched voice echoed through the marble hallway. "Can I help set the table?" "Of course, my love. But be careful. With the china, it's very expensive." Gabriel Montgomery, 16, appeared in the mansion's open kitchen with his tousled brown hair and wrinkled uniform from St. Mary's Academy. His eyes, a legacy from the mother who abandoned him 5 years earlier, carried a melancholy that seemed too heavy for his young shoulders. "Hey, Carmen. Hey, Lily." "Gabriel!" Lily ran to hug the teenager, who allowed himself to be enveloped by the girl's genuine affection. "I drew a house today at school. Want to see? It looks just like yours." "Our house, Lily," Carmen gently corrected while plating the steaming beef stew. "We only live here while I work." Gabriel frowned. "Why do you talk like that?" "You live here, period." "It's different, Gabriel. Your father lets us stay here for convenience, since I need to wake up very early to make breakfast and take care of the house. But our real home is the small apartment in Brooklyn." The teenager bit his lip, irritation growing in his chest. In recent months, since Carmen and Lily's arrival, he had experienced something he hadn't felt in years, the sensation of having a family. The woman from Miami prepared his favorite dishes, asked about his day at school, and helped with homework when necessary. Lily, with her contagious joy, had filled a void he didn't even know existed. "Gabriel, dear, what happened today at school?" Carmen served him a generous portion while adjusting linen napkins. "You seem worried." The boy sighed deeply. There was a presentation on social responsibility, everyone talking about family projects, foundations, volunteer work. He stirred the rice disinterestedly. "I didn't know what to say. My dad only talks about profit and construction." "Your father is a very hard-working man, Gabriel. He builds homes where people live, fulfilling dreams." That's important. 2. But he's never around. You talk to me more in a day than he does in an entire week. Lily, chewing on a piece of French fries, looked between the two with her big, curious eyes. Why doesn't your dad play with you, Gabriel? My dad in heaven played with me every day. The silence that followed was heavy. Carmen swallowed hard, remembering her husband who had died in a car accident 3 years earlier when Lily was only 5. Gabriel, in turn, felt a lump in his throat as he realized that an 8-year-old girl had identified exactly what was wrong in his life. Because Gabriel searched for the right words. Because he thinks giving money is the same as giving attention. At that moment, the loud sound of a crystal glass shattering against the marble floor echoed through the kitchen. Lily had tried to reach for a glass of water on the high counter and had knocked it over. Her eyes immediately filled with tears of fright. "Oh my God!" Carmen rushed to check if her daughter was hurt. "Lily, are you okay? Did you cut yourself?" Before they could clean up the shards, Richard Montgomery's deep voice thundered through the kitchen. What was that noise? The businessman appeared at the kitchen entrance, still wearing his impeccable Armani suit, with a stern expression that made Lily hide behind her mother. His dark eyes immediately fixed on the crystal shards scattered across the floor. "It was an accident, sir," Carmen hurried to explain, already bending down to pick up the fragments. "Lily was trying to get some water and that glass cost $300. Richard's voice rose an octave. "It's part of a wedding gift game. Can't you control your daughter?" Carmen stopped picking up the shards, her face paling. "Mr. Montgomery, I'll replace the glass. I'll deduct it from my salary." "How will you replace it? It's an imported piece from the Czech Republic. You can't find it anywhere." Lily began to cry, small sobs echoing through the tense silence of the kitchen. Gabriel watched the scene with growing indignation, seeing how his only source of affection in the house was being humiliated over a child's accident. "I've already told you to keep that girl away from my valuables," Richard continued, his voice heavy with the frustration built up from a tough day at the office. "You're here to work, not to play family." It was then that Lily, at 8 years old and with all the courage her innocence allowed, broke free from her mother's protective embrace and walked right in front of Richard. Her tears still flowed down her flushed face, but her voice came out firm and clear. "You're very mean. My mom works so hard for you and always keeps everything clean and nice. It was just a glass. You have so many glasses, so many beautiful things. Why are you being so mean to my mom?" The silence that followed was absolute. Richard Montgomery, a man who led meetings with dozens of executives, who negotiated million-dollar contracts without blinking, was left completely speechless in front of the courage of that little girl staring at him fearlessly. Gabriel felt something stir in his chest, a mix of pride for Lily and shame for his father. "She's right, Dad. Carmen takes care of us better than anyone ever has." "Gabriel, don't get involved." Richard tried to regain his authority, but his voice sounded less convincing. "No!" The teenager stood up from his chair. "You yell at Carmen over a glass, but when you came home yesterday you tripped and knocked over the living room vase. No one yelled at you." Carmen tried to intervene. "Gabriel, dear, you don't need to—" "Yes, I do." Lily wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "My mum is the most careful person in the world. She never breaks anything, and even if she did, breaking something isn't a crime." Richard looked at that girl with curly hair tied in 2 pigtails, wearing a pink t-shirt with a unicorn design, and for the first time in years he felt something move in his hardened chest. Her courage, the way she defended her mother without measuring the consequences, the purity of her indignation, all of it hit him like a punch to the stomach. "Have you forgotten what it's like to be a child?" Lily continued, now with a softer but still firm voice. "I always try to be careful, but sometimes things slip from our hands. My mom always says that the important thing isn't never to make a mistake, but to always try to do the right thing." Gabriel moved closer to Lily and placed his hand on her shoulder. My dad has forgotten her. Lot, Lily. He's forgotten what it's like to be family. The son's words hit Richard like a slap. He observed the scene before him. Carmen kneeling on the floor, picking up shards of crystal with her hands trembling slightly. Lily standing, her cheeks red from crying, but still staring at him with determination. Gabriel protecting both with a brotherly love he didn't recognize in his son. For the first time in a long time, Richard Montgomery found himself forced to look inside himself and didn't like what he found. The silence in the kitchen stretched on for long seconds, broken only by the ticking of the German wall clock, marking 2:15 in the afternoon. Richard looked at the three people in front of him. The woman kneeling, gathering the shards of his arrogance, the girl staring at him with a courage he had lost decades ago, and the son looking at him with a disappointment so deep it cut deeper than any business criticism. Richard began, but the words died in his throat. When was the last time he had apologized to someone? When was the last time he had been wrong about something that wasn't spreadsheets or contracts? Carmen slowly stood up, the shards of crystal carefully gathered in her hands. Mr. Montgomery, I'm really sorry about the accident. I'll look for where I can find a matching glass and... No. The word came out harsher than Richard intended. He cleared his throat, trying to soften his tone. You don't need to. It was just a glass. Lily tilted her head to the side, studying the man's face as if it were a complex puzzle. Are you okay? You look like you swallowed a frog. Gabriel stifled a laugh, and even Carmen allowed a shy smile to appear at the corner of her mouth. Richard felt disarmed by the child's observation, both innocent and devastatingly accurate. Lily, Carmen murmured softly, let's let Mr. Montgomery finish his work in peace. But, Mom, he hasn't even eaten yet. The beef stew is going to get cold, and you made it with so much care. Richard looked at the plate waiting for him on the table, still steaming, seasoned just the way he liked it. When was the last time someone had prepared a meal thinking of his personal taste? His secretary ordered executive lunches, always the same bland dishes from expensive restaurants that serve status instead of flavor. Aren't you going to eat with us? Lily insisted, her big eyes fixed on him. In my school, the teacher always says that eating alone is bad for the heart. Lily! Carmen tried to intervene, but Richard raised his hand. Maybe I can have lunch here today. The words came out hesitantly, as if he were testing a foreign language. If it's not a bother. Gabriel blinked, surprised. Really? You're going to eat with us? You don't need to look so shocked, Richard murmured, pulling out a chair. The solid wood creaked slightly under his weight. It's my home, after all. Our home, Lily corrected automatically, making everyone laugh. Even Richard managed a semblance of a smile. Carmen served a generous portion on Richard's plate, her hands still slightly trembling from the earlier confrontation. He watched her graceful movements, the way she cut the beef stew into uniform pieces, how she arranged the salad beside it. There was a natural elegance in her gestures that contrasted with her humble background. Carmen, Richard said after tasting the first bite, where did you learn to cook like this? The woman sat down in the chair across from him, still a bit tense. My grandmother, sir. She had a small restaurant in Miami. She always said that food made in a hurry doesn't nourish the soul. And nourishes? Lily asked, chewing with her mouth slightly open. The soul? For sure, Gabriel replied before anyone could speak. At least mine has been eating much better since you all got here. Richard chewed slowly, savouring not only the perfect seasoning of the beef stew, but also the strangely comforting atmosphere of that lunch. When was the last time he had participated in a conversation during a meal that didn't involve business? Gabriel, Richard tried to start a dialogue with his son. How was school today? Besides the presentation you mentioned. The teenager nearly choked on his soda, surprised by the question. Normal, I guess. We had a history test on the Gilded Age. And how was it? Well, I think. The teacher always talks about how the tycoons controlled everything, how the poor had no voice. Gabriel looked directly at his father. It reminded me of some things. Richard felt the weight of his son's gaze and the insinuation behind the words. What do you mean by that? Nothing much, just that sometimes I think some patterns haven't changed that much. Lily, oblivious to the growing tension, swung her legs in the high chair while eating. Gabriel, will you help me with my homework later? The math is really hard. Of course, Princess, always. Princess? Richard raised an eyebrow. That's what I call Lily, Gabriel explained, and there was genuine tenderness in his voice. She's the little sister I never had. Carmen swallowed hard. Gabriel, dear, you don't have to. I do. Lily and you are the most important people. In my life now? Gabriel looked defiantly at his father. You're the ones who truly care about me. The silence that followed was sharp. Richard felt as if he had been slapped, but at the same time a part of him admired his son's brutal honesty. When had Gabriel become so mature? When had he developed this capacity to love and protect? Gabriel, Richard said carefully, I know I've been absent. Work. Work is an excuse, Dad. Gabriel didn't look away. You choose to work 12 hours a day. You choose not to be here. Lily looked between her father and brother with growing concern. Why are you two talking in sad voices? Can I tell a joke to cheer you up? You can, my love, Carmen said gently, noticing that the girl was trying to lighten the mood. Why did the clown go to the doctor? Lily waited for the answers that didn't come. Because he was feeling funny. She laughed at her own joke, a crystal-clear giggle that echoed through the kitchen. Gabriel smiled genuinely, and even Richard felt the muscles in his face relax. That was terrible, Lily. I know, that's why it's funny. Richard observed the interaction and felt something strange happen in his chest. It was as if a small crack had opened in a wall he had carefully built over the years. For a few seconds, he managed to see his house not as a trophy of business achievement, but as a home where people who cared for each other shared meals and laughter. Carmen, he said impulsively, do you have family in Miami? The woman hesitated before answering. I have a sister, sir. She is sick. Cancer. That's why I came to New York. The treatments here are better, and I can help financially. And you don't miss home. Every day, she admitted, her eyes becoming distant. But sometimes we have to leave what we want to do what is necessary. Gabriel frowned. Do you send money to her? Most of what I earn here, yes. And what do you two keep? Carmen smiled shyly. Enough. Lily studies at a very good public school. We have our little apartment. We don't need much. Richard felt discomfort grow in his stomach. He spent more on a single meal in executive restaurants than Carmen probably had to live on for an entire month with her daughter, and yet she managed to maintain her dignity, her natural elegance, her generosity. Mom, Lily suddenly said, do you think Aunt Mary will get better? I have faith she will, my love. The doctors are taking very good care of her. Richard observed how Carmen responded to her daughter, with genuine hope but without false promises. There was a maturity in her approach that he admired. How many times had he lied to Gabriel about when he would be present, about when they would have time together? Dad, Gabriel said suddenly, did you know that Carmen has a college degree? Richard blinked, surprised. She does. Carmen blushed slightly. Education. I graduated from the University of Miami, but I've never been able to work here in New York. Why? Private schools want local references. Experience in New York. Public ones have very competitive exams, she shrugged. And with my accent, some places see me as unfit for certain positions. Richard felt an unexpected anger rise in his chest, not directed at Carmen, but at the system that had forced a clearly intelligent and educated woman to accept domestic work to survive. "That's absurd," he murmured. "It's the reality, Mr. Montgomery, but I don't regret it. I've managed to give Lily a good life, and we've met you." She looked affectionately at Gabriel. "Sometimes the bad things lead us to good places." Lily finished eating and got up from her chair. "Can I go draw in the living room? I promise I won't touch anything." "Sure, my love. But only at the coffee table, okay?" After Lily left, the silence among the three adults became heavier. Gabriel played with the leftover food on his plate, clearly wanting to say something. "Go ahead, Gabriel," Richard encouraged. "What are you thinking?" "I was thinking that maybe you could get to know Carmen better, not as a worker but as a person." Gabriel looked directly at his father. "She's amazing, Dad. She helps me with homework, talks about books, and taught me how to make brownies last Sunday. She—" "Gabriel," Carmen gently interrupted, "you don't have to." "I do. He needs to know what kind of person you are." Gabriel turned back to Richard. "Do you know what she did last week? She saw that I was sad because I had no one to go to the parent-teacher meeting at school, and she offered to go. She said I was like a son to her." Richard felt something tighten in his chest. I didn't even know there was a meeting." "Because you never ask about my school life." The truth hurt, but Richard forced himself to swallow it. "And you went, Carmen?" "I did, sir. Gabriel is a very special boy. The teachers only say good things about him." "Except about the absences," Gabriel murmured. "What absences?" Richard frowned. Gabriel and Carmen exchanged glances. Sometimes I miss school to take Lily to the doctor when her mum can't miss her other job." "Other job?" Richard straightened in his chair. Carmen sighed. "I work at a bakery in Little Italy from 4:30 to 7 in the morning, sir. That's why I always arrive here at 7:30 sharp." Richard was in absolute shock. "You work at a bakery before coming here?" "It's necessary, sir. Lily needs regular medical checkups because of a heart problem, and my sister needs the money for the treatment." "Carmen, do you work 15 hours a day?" 14. I leave here at 6 in the evening." Richard abruptly stood up from his chair, walking to the window. The view of the well-kept garden suddenly seemed different. He didn't know it was Carmen who watered the plants every morning before starting her household chores, that it was she who picked the roses that always adorned the breakfast table. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "I didn't think it was your business, as long as I fulfilled my duties here." Gabriel watched his father process the information. "Now, do you understand why I admire her so much, Dad? She takes care of everyone, me, Lily, the family in Miami, and still finds the energy to be loving and patient." Richard turned to look at Carmen, who maintained her dignified posture even though she was clearly uncomfortable with the attention. For the first time, he really saw her, not as the efficient worker who kept his house in order, but as an extraordinary woman who carried the weight of the world on her shoulders and still managed to smile, still managed to care for a child who wasn't hers with the same love she dedicated to her own daughter. "Carmen," he said softly, "can I ask you a question?" "Of course, sir." "Why are you so patient with me? I was rude today. I'm an absent boss. I barely greet you properly in the morning. Why haven't you told me to go to hell yet?" For the first time since he had known her, Carmen laughed, a genuine musical laugh. "Because we are all fighting our own battles, Mr. Montgomery. You may have money and success, but I see in your eyes the same loneliness I felt when I lost my husband, and I see in Gabriel the same need I see in Lily when she misses her father." The words hit Richard like a punch to the solar plexus. This woman, who barely knew him for 3 months, had identified wounds in his soul that he himself refused to acknowledge. "Maybe," Richard said hesitantly, "maybe it's time for me to start fighting better." The March afternoon arrived heavy with humidity and promises of rain, typical of the summer in New York that insisted on lingering. Richard had cancelled 2 important meetings, something unthinkable just a few days ago, and found himself sitting in his Italian leather armchair, watching through the office window as Gabriel and Lily played in the garden. The girl was trying to teach the teenager how to play hopscotch on the cobblestone floor, while he pretended to struggle just to see her laugh. "Gabriel, you're cheating!" Lily's high-pitched voice echoed through the garden. "You can't step on the line." "I'm trying, teacher, but my feet are too big." The girl's crystal-clear laughter filled the afternoon silence, and Richard felt something tighten in his chest. When was the last time he had heard Gabriel laugh like that? When was the last time he himself had experienced such pure and uncomplicated joy? "Mr. Montgomery?" Carmen lightly knocked on the half-open door. "May I come in?" "Of course." Richard gestured for her to sit in the chair across from his desk. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you." Carmen sat on the edge of the chair, her hands carefully folded in her lap. Her nails were impeccably cared for despite the manual work, and Richard noticed that she wore only a simple gold ring on her ring finger, probably her wedding band. "Carmen, I've been thinking a lot about what we talked about yesterday, about your education, about your situation. Sir, if there's anything you're not satisfied with regarding my work—" "No," Richard interrupted, realizing how she automatically assumed she was in trouble. "It's exactly the opposite. I want to propose something different." Carmen blinked, confused. "Different how, sir?" "First, I want you to stop working at the bakery." Carmen's face paled. "Sir, I can't. I need that money for—" "I will raise your salary here to compensate for what you lose there," Richard continued. Carmen leaned back in the armchair. "You work 14 hours a day, Carmen. That's inhumane." "But, sir, I didn't ask for a raise. I'm not doing charity." Richard's voice came out harsher than he intended. "I'm recognizing value. A woman with your education and dedication should be earning much more than I pay." Carmen fell silent for a long moment, her almond-shaped eyes studying his face as if searching for a hidden catch. "Why are you doing this?" The question was so direct that it caught Richard off guard. Why was he doing this? Guilt, late recognition, or something deeper that he couldn't yet name? "Because—" Richard searched for the right words. "Because my son is happy for the first time in years. Because you brought something to this house that I didn't even know was missing. And because a woman who takes such good care of my family deserves to be taken care of as well." Tears formed in Carmen's eyes, but she quickly controlled them. "You are very kind, but I'm afraid of getting used to it. I'm afraid that one day you'll change your mind and I'll end up in a worse situation than I was." The brutal honesty of her response hit Richard like a punch in the stomach. She didn't trust him. And rightly so. How many employees had he coldly fired over the years when they didn't meet his exact expectations? "Carmen, can I ask you a personal question?" She nodded hesitantly. "What was your husband like?" The smile that appeared on Carmen's face was soft and melancholic. "Anthony was a literature professor at the university, a sweet intellectual man. He read poetry to Lily every night before bed." "And were you happy?" "Very. We were poor, but we had big dreams. He wanted to write a book about regional literature. I wanted to open a community school. Her voice drifted off. We had plans for when Lily got older. What happened to him? Car. Accident coming back from the university on a rainy night. A drunk driver. Carmen swallowed hard. Lily was 5. I had to sell our house to pay off the debts and the funeral costs. Richard felt like a monster for asking, but he needed to understand. And you never thought about getting married again? I've received proposals, Carmen admitted. But I don't know. Anthony left a very big mark, and Lily always comes first in any decision I make. Does she like it here? She loves it, especially Gabrielle. Carmen smiled genuinely. She never had an older brother. Gabrielle treats her like a princess. And you, do you like it here? Carmen hesitated before answering. It's complicated. I like the routine, taking care of you all. But sometimes I feel like I'm being selfish. Keeping Lily away from family, away from our roots, just because life is easier financially here. Richard stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Gabriel had sat down on the grass, and Lily was trying to braid his hair. Have you thought that maybe it's not selfish? That maybe it's what's best for her? What do you mean? Lily has access to a good education here, has the medical care she needs, has an older brother who adores her. Richard turned to face her. Sometimes true love means staying, not leaving. Carmen fell silent, absorbing the words. You speak like someone who understands departures. My wife left me 5 years ago, Richard admitted, surprising himself with his own honesty. She said I had become a stranger, that success had changed me. And had it? Completely. Richard returned to the armchair. When I started building this empire, I thought I was doing it for them, for Gabriel, to give him everything I never had. But in the process, I forgot to give the most important thing. What was that? My presence, my time, my love. Carmen studied his face intently. And now? Now I'm trying to learn again. With both of you. Lily reminds me how it's possible to be brave and honest. Gabriel shows me how to love unconditionally. And you... Richard paused, realizing that his next words would take him into unknown territory. What about me? You show me how it's possible to be strong and kind at the same time, how it's possible to sacrifice for others without becoming bitter. The silence that followed was broken by Lily's voice, shouting outside, Gabriel, come see! There's an injured bird here. They both automatically stood up and ran to the window. In the garden, Lily was kneeling next to a rose bush, where a young sparrow lay fallen, apparently with an injured wing. Mom! Lily shouted upon seeing Carmen at the window. You need to help him! Carmen sighed. She can't stand to see any animals suffering. In the apartment, we've taken care of 3 injured cats she found on the street. And what happened to them? We found homes for 2. The third stayed with us. Carmen smiled. His name is Romeo, and he sleeps in bed with Lily every night. Richard watched Carmen run to the garden, Gabriel helping her carefully examine the bird, while Lily gave precise instructions on how not to hurt it further. There was something in the dynamic between the 3 that deeply moved him, the natural way they functioned as a family unit. He went down to join them in the garden. How's the patient? I think it's just a sprain, Gabriel said, gently holding the sparrow. The wing doesn't seem broken. We need to make a temporary nest for him, Lily declared authoritatively, in the shoebox in my room. Lily, dear, Carmen tried to argue, maybe it's better to take him to a vet. No, he needs to stay here until he gets better, just like we did with Romeo. Richard observed the little discussion and felt a strange tenderness grow in his chest. We have that covered area by the pool. We can improvise a safe place for him there. 3 pairs of eyes turned to him, surprised. Really, Dad? Gabriel asked. Why not, if Lily... Do you think he needs care, We'll take care of him. Lily practically jumped for joy. Thank you, Mr. Gabriel's dad. Mr. Gabriel's dad? Richard genuinely laughed for the first time in years. That's how I call you in my head, Lily explained with the typical seriousness of children. Because you are Gabriel's dad, but not my dad, so it's Mr. Gabriel's dad. Carmen blushed. Lily, you can't. Yes, I can, Richard interrupted, surprising everyone, including himself. Actually, it's quite creative. They spent the next hour organizing a temporary home for the sparrow, which Lily named Lucky, because he was fortunate they found him. Gabriel showed infinite patience with the girl's detailed instructions, while Carmen prepared a mixture of water and sugar to hydrate the animal. Richard found himself observing more than participating, fascinated by the dynamic among the three. There was a harmony there that he had never experienced in his own family. No arguments about who was right or wrong, no competition, just genuine collaboration to help a helpless creature. Mr. Montgomery, Carmen said when they finally managed to settle Lucky into his new temporary home, thank you for allowing this. I know it must seem silly. It doesn't seem silly, Richard replied, watching Lily softly hum to the bird. It seems human. Gabriel looked at his father with an expression Richard couldn't decipher. Dad, can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you suddenly change? Not that I'm complaining, but it's strange. Richard honestly considered the question. I think you three reminded me of who I used to be, or who I wished I had been. And who did you used to be? Someone who cared more about people than spreadsheets. Someone who hadn't forgotten that building houses is only worthwhile if they become homes. Lily, who had been listening to the entire conversation, approached Richard and, to everyone's surprise, including her own, held his big hand with her tiny ones. Mr. Gabriel's dad, she said solemnly, you can learn to be happy again. My mum always says it's never too late to remember how to smile. Richard looked at that small girl with curly hair and bright eyes full of hope, and felt something break definitively inside his chest. Not painfully, but like a dam finally giving way to let the water flow freely. Thank you, Lily. I think you might be right. And for the first time in 5 years, Richard Montgomery believed that perhaps there was still hope for him to become the man he should have always been. The month of April brought with it the first real change in temperature in New York, with cool mornings announcing the start of autumn. Richard woke up earlier than usual, not because of work commitments that used to dictate his routine, but because he had promised Lily he would help take care of Lucky before she went to school. The sparrow had fully recovered, but the girl insisted he still needed medical supervision before returning to the wild. As he descended to the garden, Richard found a scene that made him stop at the kitchen door. Carmen was preparing breakfast coffee while softly humming a folk song, her gentle voice echoing through the quiet kitchen. Lily, still in her pajamas, was helping to cut fruits for the salad, focused as if it were the most important task in the world. Gabriel, who usually slept until the last possible minute, was sitting at the table reading a book while having coffee with milk. "Good morning," Richard said softly, not wanting to break the peaceful atmosphere of the morning. "Mr. Gabriel's dad." Lily jumped from her chair and ran to hug him. "Lucky ate 3 little worms today. Mum said that's a sign he's strong." Richard found himself returning the hug naturally, his large hands enveloping the small body of the girl. "That's great. And you? Have you had coffee yet?" "Not yet. I was waiting for everyone to wake up so we could have it together, like a real family." Lily's innocent words created a momentary silence. Carmen stopped stirring the pancakes in the pan. Gabriel lifted his eyes from the book, and Richard felt a lump form in his throat. "Lily," Carmen murmured softly. "Dear." "What? Isn't that how families do it? They have coffee together?" Gabriel closed the book and looked at his father. Actually, it's the first time in years I've had breakfast coffee with someone other than Carmen. And I've never had breakfast coffee with a Mr. Gabriel's dad, Lily added, making everyone laugh, despite the underlying tension. Richard sat at the table, accepting the cup of coffee Carmen offered him. The liquid was perfect, strong but not bitter, just how he liked it. How had she figured out his preferences without him ever mentioning anything? "Carmen, can I ask you something?" Richard said while watching her serve the still warm pancakes. "Of course, sir." "How did you know I like my coffee this way? I never mentioned anything." Carmen blushed slightly. "Observation. You always leave a little at the bottom of the cup when it's too strong, and add sugar when it's weak. After a few weeks, I figured out the right balance." Gabriel smiled. "Carmen notices everything. She knows I like French toast, but not too much, that I prefer pulp-free orange juice, and that I get grumpy when I don't have something sweet. After lunch, it's my job to take care of you," Carmen said simply, but there was pride in her voice. "Mom," Lily said as she poured an excessive amount of honey over her pancakes, "tell Mr. Gabriel's dad about what you did before." "Lily, tell about the kids you taught." Richard raised an eyebrow. "You taught classes?" Carmen hesitated before responding. "In Miami, I coordinated an after-school program for children from low-income families. It was volunteer work, but it was what fulfilled me the most." "How did it work?" "We received children with learning difficulties, mainly in English and math. Many came from families where the parents couldn't read, so they had no help at home." Gabriel leaned forward, intrigued. "And did it work?" "Very well. In 2 years, we managed to improve the grades of 90% of the children. Some even received scholarships." Carmen's face lit up as she spoke about the project. "We had partnerships with psychologists, dentists, social workers. It was a comprehensive effort." Richard observed the transformation in Carmen's posture as she talked about her previous work. Her eyes sparkled, her hands moved expressively, her voice gained strength and conviction. This was the true Carmen, not the submissive employee, but the passionate educator. "Why did you stop?" "When Anthony died, I couldn't concentrate anymore. The children needed someone present, and I was lost." Carmen lowered her gaze. "Then I moved to New York thinking it would be a fresh start, but I discovered that starting from scratch is harder than I imagined." "Do you miss it?" "Every day." Lily swallowed a piece of pancake and looked seriously at Richard. "My mom is really good at teaching. She taught me to read before I went to school, and all my homework becomes easy when she explains." "That's true," Gabriel confirmed. "Last week she helped me with an English assignment about regionalism. She knew more about Southern literature than my teacher." Richard took a sip of coffee, processing the information. "Carmen, have you thought about going back to work in education here in New York?" "As I said yesterday, sir, it's hard to find opportunities without local contacts." "What if you had contacts?" Carmen looked at him cautiously. "What do you mean?" "I have several clients who work in education, private school owners, people involved in social projects. I can introduce you." The silence that followed was heavy. Gabriel stopped eating. Lily watched the adults with curiosity, and Carmen seemed to be struggling against some strong emotion. "Why would you do that?" she finally asked. "Because wasting talent is a crime, and because—" Richard hesitated, searching for the right words. "Because I want to see you happy. Both of you." Lily clapped her hands. "So Mom can teach other kids again?" "If that's what she wants," Richard replied, but kept his eyes on Carmen. I need to think," Carmen murmured. "It's a lot to take in at once." "Of course. There's no rush." Gabriel stood up from the table. "I need to go to school. Carmen, thank you for the coffee." He kissed the woman's forehead with genuine affection before turning to his father. "Dad, are you having lunch at home today?" "I am. Why?" "Nothing specific, I just like it when you have lunch with us." After Gabriel left, Lily announced that she needed to get ready for school. "Mum, can you help me pick out my outfit?" "Of course, my love. Go ahead. I'll be right there." When they were alone, Richard and Carmen exchanged glances for a long moment. "Mr. Montgomery," Carmen began, "I don't understand what's happening." "What do you mean?" "This kindness, this concern. It's not the man I knew 3 months ago." Richard laughed humorlessly. "I'm not the man I thought I was either." "And what changed?" "You two, mainly Lily." Richard fiddled with the edge of his cup. "When she confronted me about the broken glass, it was as if someone had turned on a light in a dark room. Suddenly I could see who I had become." "And who had you become?" "A man who had everything and nothing, who builds houses but doesn't know how to build a home anymore." Carmen absorbed the words in silence. "And now? Now I'm trying to learn from you two. Gabriel smiles more in a week than he did all year. Lily treats me as if I deserve to be treated with kindness, even though I haven't done anything to earn it. And you and I. You show me every day how it's possible to be strong without being cruel, how it's possible to care for others without losing yourself in the process." Carmen abruptly stood up from the table, walking over to the sink. "Sir, that scares me." "What?" "This change, this closeness." She began washing the dishes with mechanical movements. "I'm afraid of getting used to it, and then you go back to being who you were before, and I end up feeling groundless again." Richard stepped closer to her but kept a respectful distance. "Carmen, look at me." She turned, her hands still wet from the sink water. "I'm not going to promise that I won't make mistakes. I'm not going to promise that I'll always be perfect. But I promise that I will never again be the man who yelled at you over a broken glass." "How can you be sure?" "Because now I know what I have to lose." Carmen's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly regained her composure. "I need to take Lily to school." "Of course." "Carmen?" "Yes?" "Think about the proposal to go back to working in education, but think about what you want, not what you think you should want." She nodded and headed for the stairs. At the door, she paused and turned. "Mr. Montgomery." "Yes?" "Thank you for everything." After she left, Richard was alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of a family breakfast. For the first time in years, he wasn't anxious to get to the office. For the first time in years, he had found something more important than spreadsheets and meetings. He had found a reason to want to be a better man. The end of April brought with it the first heavy rains of the New York autumn. On the morning of an especially grey Thursday, Richard cancelled yet another important meeting, the third that week, to stay home. His secretary, Marcia, was visibly concerned about the changes in her boss's behavior, but he could no longer pretend that real estate contracts were more important than the little moments he now cherished at home. "Father of Gabriel!" Lily burst into the living room like a little whirlwind of energy, interrupting Richard, who was reading financial reports on the sofa. "Mum said you can take me to release Lucky today." Richard looked out the window. The rain had stopped just a few hours ago, leaving the garden soaked, but with a refreshing coolness in the air. The sparrow, fully recovered, had been flapping its wings vigorously in its makeshift cage for the past few days. "Ah, you sure you're ready to let him go?" Richard asked, closing the laptop and giving his full attention to the girl. "I am." Lily nodded determinedly, but her eyes revealed a hint of sadness. "Mum explained that when you truly love someone, you let them be free to be happy." The child's simple words hit Richard with unexpected force. How many times had he tried to control the people he loved, trying to mold them according to his expectations? "Your mother is a very wise woman," he murmured. "I know, that's why I want to be just like her when I grow up." Carmen appeared in the doorway, wearing a simple navy blue dress that accentuated her almond-shaped eyes. "Lily, don't bother Mr. Montgomery. He has important work." "Actually," Richard interrupted, "I was thinking if you could keep me company. Today is a perfect day to stay home." Gabriel came down the stairs at that moment, overhearing the conversation. "Seriously, Dad? You're staying home again? Is it that surprising?" "A little," Gabriel admitted. "But it's good. It's normal. Normal. Like normal families do. They stay together." The word family hung in the air for a moment, laden with meanings none of them were completely ready to confront. "So," Richard stood up, "shall we release our little bird?" The small group headed to the garden, where Lucky awaited them in his temporary cage. Lily insisted on being the one to open the door, and the sparrow hesitated for a moment before flying to the nearest tree, where it stayed for a few minutes, as if thanking its caregivers. "Goodbye, Lucky." Lily waved vigorously. "Remember to visit us." "Do you think he'll come back?" Gabriel asked. "If he wants to," Carmen replied softly. "The best things in life always come back when they want to, not when we force them." Richard watched Carmen as she spoke, noticing the melancholy in her voice. There was something different about her behavior in recent days, a subtle distance that troubled him deeply. "Carmen," he said as Lily and Gabriel ran back inside the house to escape a light drizzle that had begun to fall. "Are you okay? You seem—" "I got a call last night," she interrupted, unable to look directly at him. "From Miami." Richard's stomach dropped. "Your sister?" "No, an old friend, someone I met before I married Anthony." Richard felt something, cold spreading through his chest, but he tried to keep his voice neutral. "And?" "He's in New York for work. He wants to see me." "Are you going?" Carmen finally met his gaze, and Richard saw confusion and pain in her eyes. "I don't know. It's complicated." "Why is it complicated?" "Because," Carmen sighed deeply, "because he was always a stability option that I rejected in the past. And now it might be time to reconsider." "Stability?" "He's a veterinarian, has a successful clinic in Miami. He proposed to me twice, once before I met Anthony, and again, right after I became a widow." Richard felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. "And you want to marry him?" "I want—" Carmen paused, searching for words. "I want Lily to have a father figure. I want to be close to my family again. I want to stop feeling like I'm living someone else's life." "Do you feel that way? Like you're living someone else's life?" "Sometimes." Carmen looked around at the mansion. "All of this is very beautiful, very comfortable. But it's not my world, Mr. Montgomery. What if it could be?" The words came out before Richard could think them through, and both were shocked by the intensity of the question. "What do you mean?" Carmen whispered. Richard ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with himself. "I don't know what I mean. I just know that the idea of you leaving bothers me more than it should." "Why should it bother you?" "Because you and Lily have become important to me and to Gabriel. Important as efficient employees, or important as family." Richard finished the sentence she couldn't complete. "As the family we didn't know we needed." Carmen closed her eyes for a moment. "Mr. Montgomery, this is dangerous." "What?" "This closeness, these feelings. I am your employee. You are my boss. Lily and I are financially dependent on you. And so when the situation gets too complicated, I will be the only one who loses. It's always like that." The rain began to fall harder, forcing them to run back into the house. In the kitchen, they found Lily and Gabriel making hot chocolate, working in harmony as if they had been true siblings for years. "You brought rain in your hair," Lily laughed, offering towels to the two adults. "Thank you, Princess," Richard said, but his eyes remained on Carmen. "Dad," Gabriel said while stirring the chocolate on the stove, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why are you looking at Carmen that way?" Richard blinked, realizing he had been too obvious. "What way?" "Like you're afraid she might disappear." His son's perceptive observation caught him off guard. We were just talking about what?" Carmen and Richard exchanged glances, neither knowing how to explain the complexity of the situation to the children. "Gabriel," Carmen said carefully, "sometimes adults need to make difficult decisions about the future." "What kind of decisions?" "Decisions about where to live, about what job to take." Lily stopped stirring the hot chocolate. "Are you leaving, Mum?" Maybe. I'm still thinking." The silence that followed was devastating. Gabriel left the room. As the spoon fell into the pot, Lily began to tremble her lower lip, and Richard felt a primal anger rise in his chest, not directed at Carmen, but at the unfair situation that had placed them in this position. "Why?" Lily asked in a small voice. "Because sometimes we need to do what's best in the long run, even when it hurts in the moment." "But we are your family now," Gabriel exploded. "You can't just leave." "Gabriel, dear." "No, you are the only real mother I've had in the last 5 years. Lily is my sister. You can't just—" The teenager couldn't finish the sentence. He ran out of the kitchen, leaving the 3 adults in a heavy silence. Lily began to cry silently, and Carmen pulled her into a tight embrace. "Mom," the girl sobbed, "did I do something wrong? Is that why you want to leave?" "No, my love, you are perfect. It's just... What?" Carmen looked over her daughter's head at Richard, and he saw despair in her eyes. "Lily," Richard knelt in front of the two, "your mother is not leaving because you did something wrong. Sometimes adults get confused about what is the right thing to do. And do you think she should leave?" Lily's direct question forced him to confront his own feelings in a raw and honest way. "No," he admitted, "I think you should stay, forever, if possible." "Then why does she want to go?" Richard looked directly at Carmen. "Maybe because she thinks she doesn't have enough reasons to stay." "What kind of reasons?" "The reasons that make a person feel at home, that make them feel loved and valued for who they are, not just for what they do." Carmen swallowed hard, fully understanding what he was trying to communicate. "Mr. Montgomery," she whispered. "That's what, Carmen? Is it honest? Is it true? Is it too late?" "It's complicated. It's only complicated if we allow it to be." Lily looked between the 2 adults, her 8 years not enough to fully understand the tension, but sensing that something important was being decided. "Mom," she finally said, "you taught me that when we find a family that loves us, we don't abandon them, even when it's hard." The child's words echoed through the kitchen like a simple and absolute truth. Carmen looked at her daughter, then at Richard, and finally at the house around them, a house that, without her realizing it, had become a home. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but inside the kitchen, warmed by hot chocolate and raw emotions, 3 people faced the possibility of becoming something more than they had ever imagined possible. The following week passed with palpable tension. Richard tried to work from home whenever possible, making excuses to cancel commitments he had once considered sacred. Gabriel was visibly worried, following Carmen around the house like a lost puppy, fearing she would disappear at any moment. Lily, with the keen perception of children, alternated between moments of forced joy and direct questions about when they would have to leave the pretty house. On Monday morning, the phone rang during breakfast. Carmen answered in the kitchen, and Richard watched her posture change immediately. Her back stiffened, her voice became more formal, more distant. "Hello? Yes, it's her. Hi, Mark." A long pause. Yes, I can. This afternoon? All right. At the Central Park, at the cafe you mentioned. At 3 o'clock. When she hung up, the silence in the kitchen was deafening. Lily stopped chewing her toast. Gabriel stopped pretending to read the sports section, and Richard felt his stomach tighten painfully. "Was it him?" Gabriel asked, his voice carrying a maturity he shouldn't have at 16. "It was," Carmen confirmed, unable to look directly at any of them. "Are you going to meet him?" "I am." Lily dropped her toast on the plate. "Mom, can I come too?" "No, my love. It's an adult conversation." "Conversation about what?" the girl insisted, her big eyes fixed on her mother's face. Carmen hesitated, glancing quickly at Richard before answering. About possibilities for our future." "What kind of possibilities?" Gabriel pressed, his voice growing tenser. "Gabriel, dear, it's complicated." "Stop saying it's complicated!" The teenager exploded, abruptly standing up from his chair. "None of this is complicated. Either you stay here with us because you love us, or you leave because you don't. Which is it?" "Gabriel!" Richard warned, but the boy was visibly desperate. "No, Dad. Someone needs to tell the truth." "Here!" Gabriel turned to Carmen, tears of frustration shining in his eyes. "You said you saw me as a son. You said we were family. Was that a lie?" "Of course it wasn't a lie," Carmen replied, her own voice choked. "You are the most important people in my life, but sometimes love isn't enough, Gabriel. Sometimes there are other things to consider." "What other things?" "Money, because my dad can—" "It's not about money," Carmen finally exploded, revealing a frustration she had been building for weeks. "It's about reality. It's about the fact that I am the employee and you are the employers. It's about the fact that no matter how much affection exists here, in the end, I am disposable." The silence that followed was devastating. Lily began to cry silently. Gabriel turned pale as a sheet, and Richard felt as if he had been slapped in the face. "Disposable," Richard repeated, his voice dangerously low. "Is that how you feel here?" Carmen realized the impact of her words and tried to compose herself. "Mr. Montgomery, I didn't mean to—" "No, say it. Is that exactly how you feel? Disposable?" Carmen looked at the 3 people she had learned to love and felt her heart shatter. "I feel I am living a dream that could end at any moment. And I prefer to wake up by my own choice rather than being forced to wake up when you all tire of playing family." "Playing family?" Gabriel whispered, as if he had been stabbed. "Gabriel, I didn't mean it that way." "Then how did you mean it?" The teenager was now visibly trembling. "How can you call what we have a game?" Lily slipped off the chair and ran to hug her mother, sobbing loudly. "Mom, please don't make us leave. I like it here. I like Gabriel and Mr. Gabriel's dad." Richard watched the scene, Carmen hugging her crying daughter, Gabriel standing with clenched fists trying not to cry, Lily shattered in the middle of a conflict she couldn't fully understand, and felt a primal rage grow in his chest. "Enough," he said, his voice cutting through the emotions like a blade. "Gabriel, take Lily to watch TV in the living room. I need to talk to Carmen alone." "Dad, Now, Gabriel." Richard's tone allowed no discussion. Gabriel took Lily by the hand, murmured something reassuring in her ear, and the two left the kitchen, leaving the adults alone. Richard walked to the window, his hands resting on the marble counter, the knuckles white from tension. 5 minutes, he said without turning around. In 5 minutes, you managed to destroy everything we built here. Mr. Montgomery, no. He turned abruptly to face her. Now you will listen to me. Do you think you are being discarded? That we are playing family? I didn't mean... Do you know how much money I lost last week, cancelling meetings to stay home? Do you know how many contracts I didn't sign because I chose to have lunch with you? Do you know how many times I woke up in the middle of the night, worried if you were happy here? Carmen fell silent, her eyes wide. Do you think this is a game? Do you think the way Gabriel has changed in the last few months is a game? The way he smiles now, how he talks to me, how he found a reason to be happy? I know it's not a game. You just what? Are you afraid? Are you afraid to be happy? Are you afraid to believe that you can be loved for who you are, not for what you do? The words hit Carmen like arrows, touching wounds she was trying to hide, even from herself. I'm afraid, she finally admitted, her voice barely a whisper. I'm very afraid. Of what? Of giving myself completely and then finding out that it wasn't enough. Of Lily getting used to having a family and then losing it. She stopped, struggling against tears. Of what, Carmen? Of falling in love with you and discovering that you were just feeling guilty or needy. The silence that followed was absolute. Richard stood still, absorbing the brutal honesty of the confession. Do you think that's it? He asked softly. Guilt or neediness? I don't know. How can I know? You lost your wife 5 years ago. You have a complicated relationship with Gabriel, an empty house. Maybe I'm just convenient, an easy solution to loneliness. Richard took 2 steps toward her, stopping only when he was close enough to see the tears she was trying to hold back. Carmen, look at me. She reluctantly raised her eyes. In the last 3 months, 4, the first time in 5 years, I wake up wanting to be home. For the first time in years, I laugh. For the first time since I can't remember when, I care more about the well-being of others than about profits and spreadsheets. He paused, searching for the right words. This isn't guilt or neediness. This is... What is it? It's love. I've fallen in love with you, Carmen. For your strength, for your kindness, for the way you care for everyone around you. I fell in love with how you turned this house into a home and my son into a man I can be proud of. Carmen closed her eyes, the tears finally escaping. And Lily, did you fall in love with her too? Or is she just part of the package? Lily, Richard said with a tenderness that surprised even him, taught me to be human again. She taught me that courage sometimes comes in small packages with messy pigtails. She's not part of the package, Carmen. She's my daughter in every way that matters. And what if it doesn't work out? What if you change your mind? What if it does work out? Richard interrupted. What if we are happy? What if we create the family that Gabriel has always wanted, that Lily deserves, that we both never knew we needed? Carmen opened her eyes and looked at him. And that man in Miami? What about him? He offers security, stability, a life without complications. And what do we offer here? Carmen looked around the kitchen where they had shared so many moments of simple happiness, then turned her eyes back to Richard. You offer love. True, complicated, scary, but real. So which will you choose? Security or love? Carmen paused, listening to the muffled voices of Gabriel and Lily in the living room, seeing in Richard's face a vulnerability he rarely showed. I need to think. I need to talk to Mark today, hear what he has to say. And then I will decide what kind of life I want to have, what kind of mother I want to be for Lily, what kind of person I want to be. Richard nodded, although every fibre of his being screamed to beg her to stay. All right. But Carmen? Yes? Regardless of what you decide, you have never been disposable. Here, you two have become the center of our family. If you choose to leave, it will be because you want to. Not because you are not valued. Carmen looked at him for a long moment, memorizing his face, as if it could be the last time she saw him like this. Vulnerable, honest, completely in love. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." And for the first time since she arrived at that house, Carmen Smith, because it was. As soon as he began to see it, even without realizing it, he felt that he had a real choice to make. The afternoon dragged on with the torturous slowness of a foregone execution. Richard had tried to work, but the spreadsheet seemed like meaningless hieroglyphics in the face of the anxiety consuming his thoughts. Gabriel wandered around the house like a ghost, checking the clock every 5 minutes, while Lily was visibly confused by the tension hanging over everyone like a storm cloud. "Dad," Gabriel appeared at the office door at 2:30 in the afternoon. "Can I talk to you?" Richard closed the laptop and gestured to the armchair in front of his desk. "Sure. What's going on?" "It's about Carmen. About you two." Richard straightened in his chair. "What do you mean?" "Dad, I'm not a kid. I know you're in love with her." His son's direct declaration caught Richard completely off guard. "Gabriel, You don't need to deny it. It's obvious. The way you look at her, how you've changed since she got here, how worried you get when she's sad." Gabriel leaned forward. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" "It's complicated." "Please don't say it's complicated," Gabriel exploded. "Everyone keeps saying it's complicated, but it's not. You love each other. She and Lily love us. We love them. Where's the complication?" Richard watched his son. When had he become so perceptive, so mature? "Things between adults aren't always simple, Gabriel." "Why aren't they?" "Because she was our housekeeper. Because you come from different worlds. Does that even matter?" "For some people, yes. For you." The question hung in the air. Richard thought of his sister, Edna, who had already made subtle comments about Carmen's excessive influence on the family. He thought of his partners, his reputation in the business world, the social differences that really existed between them. "No," he finally replied. "For me, it doesn't matter." "Then why are you letting her go?" "I'm not letting her go. I'm respecting her choice." Gabriel stood up abruptly. "Dad, you're being foolish." "Gabriel, you are! You're being foolish." The teenager walked to the window, visibly frustrated. "Carmen is scared. She lost everything once when her husband died. Now she found a new family, but she's terrified of losing it all again." "And what do you think I should do?" "Fight for her. Show her that she won't lose anything, that we'll always be here." "How?" Gabriel turned around, his eyes shining with determination. "Marry her." The silence that followed was absolute. Richard blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. "What?" "Marry her, Dad. Make her understand that this isn't temporary, that it's not a game, that you want her to be your wife, that Lily should be your daughter, that we should be a real family." "Gabriel, it's not that simple." "Why isn't it? Do you love her?" "Yes." "Does she love you?" "I think so." "Does Lily want to be our family?" "She does." "Then where's the problem?" Richard looked at his son, seeing in him a conviction and simplicity that he had lost somewhere along the way. "What if she says no?" "What if she says yes?" Gabriel retorted. "Dad, you built an empire from scratch. You faced dozens of investors, thousands of tough decisions, and you're afraid of a woman who weighs 50 kilos? Despite the anxiety, Richard laughed. "When did you become so wise?" "Since I got a mum and a sister who could leave at any moment." Gabriel's voice turned serious again. "Dad, I've never asked you for anything, but I'm asking now. Fight for them, for us." At that moment, Lily came running into the office. "Gabriel! Mr. Gabriel's dad! Mom is getting ready to go out." The two men exchanged a glance loaded with tension. "Dad!" Gabriel said urgently. "Now is the time. If you let her meet that guy without fighting, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." Richard looked at Lily, who was waiting anxiously without fully understanding the gravity of the situation, then at Gabriel, whose eyes pleaded for an action that could save the family they had all learned to love. "You two," Richard said suddenly, getting up, "want to go for a drive." "Now?" Gabriel frowned. "Now. We have an important stop to make." 30 minutes later, Richard parked his BMW in front of a traditional jewelry store on Madison Avenue. Lily and Gabriel watched confused as he got out of the car with determination. "Dad, what are we doing here?" Gabriel asked. "Buying a ring." "A ring," Lily squealed, clapping her hands. "For my mom." "For your mom," Richard confirmed, feeling a mix of terror and euphoria coursing through his veins. Inside the jewelry store, Richard quickly explained to the salesperson what he was looking for. Gabriel held Lily's hand, both fascinated as Richard examined different options. "This one," he finally said, pointing to a white gold ring with a sleek but not ostentatious solitaire diamond. "Simple, beautiful, eternal. Just like Mom likes," Lily solemnly approved. "Dad," Gabriel whispered as Richard paid, "are you sure about this?" "I've never been sure of anything in my life," Richard admitted, "but I know I can't let them go without a fight." It was 4:15 when they returned to the mansion. Richard knew that Carmen had left for her meeting at 3, but he hoped he could still intercept her before she made any final decisions. "Lily," he said as they entered the house, "can you go to your room for a bit? Gabriel and I need to prepare a surprise for your mom." "What kind of surprise?" Her eyes sparkled with curiosity. "The kind that can change our lives forever." Lily ran upstairs and Gabriel turned to his father. "And now?" "Now we wait for her to come back and hope that our family is stronger than her fears." Richard tucked the ring into his pocket and sat down to wait. Each passing minute felt like an eternity. At 5 in the afternoon he heard the sound of the key in the lock and felt his heart race violently. Carmen walked through the front door, her eyes red from crying, her face pale and exhausted. Upon seeing him waiting in the living room with Gabriel, she stopped as if she had been shocked. "Hello," she said softly. "Hello," Richard replied, standing up. "How did it go?" Carmen looked between father and son, clearly sensing that something important was happening. "It was enlightening." "In what way?" "Mark offered me exactly what I imagined. Security, stability, a predictable life in Miami." She paused, taking off her coat. "A life without surprises, without risks, without love," Gabriel completed. Carmen looked at the teenager with infinite affection. "Without the kind of love you two taught me exists." "And what did you say to him?" Richard asked, his voice carefully controlled. "I told him I had already found my family, and that I wasn't willing to abandon them." The silence that followed was broken by Lily's joyful scream, who had overheard the conversation from the top of the stairs and was now running down to throw herself into her mother's arms. "You stayed! You stayed!" the girl repeated through tears of happiness. Gabriel approached and hugged both of them, his own eyes brimming with emotion. "Welcome back home." Richard watched the scene for a moment, feeling such a deep relief that his legs almost gave way. Then he remembered the ring in his pocket and the decision he had made. "Carmen," he said, and something in his tone made everyone turn to him. "There's one more thing." "What?" She frowned, worried. Richard took a deep breath, pulled the ring from his pocket, and knelt before her right there in the living room, ignoring Lily's muffled gasps of surprise and Gabriel's huge smile. "Marry me," he said simply, "not because it's convenient or because it solves problems. Marry me because I love you, because I love Lily, because I want us to be a real family, legally and officially. Carmen froze, looking at the man kneeling before her with a ring in his hands, at Gabriel, who was silently cheering, at Lily, whose eyes were as big as saucers. "Richard," she whispered, "I know it's scary. I know it's a risk, but I also know that you love me, and that what we have is real and worth any risk. Say yes." "Mom!" Lily shouted. "Say yes!" Carmen looked at her daughter, then at Gabriel, finally back at Richard. "Are you sure? Absolutely sure?" "The only certainty I have is that I want to spend the rest of my life proving to both of you that you deserve to be loved and protected." Carmen closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them, they were shining with tears of happiness. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." The explosion of joy that followed echoed throughout the mansion. Lily jumping and shouting, Gabriel hugging his father tightly, Carmen crying as Richard slipped the ring onto her finger. And for the first time in 5 years, that house was truly a home. The first days after the proposal passed in a careful euphoria, as if everyone were walking on crystal eggs, fearing that a sudden move could break the spell. Lily woke up every morning running to her mother's room to make sure the ring was still there, that it hadn't just been a wonderful dream. Gabriel, for his part, showed a contained happiness, but his eyes sparkled with a joy he hadn't felt in years. "Mr. Gabriel's father," Lily said during breakfast on a sunny Thursday morning in May, "now that you're going to marry my mom, can I call you Daddy Richard?" The simple question hit Richard like a bolt of lightning. He stopped chewing his toast and looked at the girl, then at Carmen, who was holding her breath, waiting for his reaction. "You would like to call me Daddy?" he asked carefully. "Very much. I've always wanted to have a daddy again, and you are so nice to me." Lily swung her feet in the chair, completely unaware of the emotional impact of her words. "But only if you want to be my daddy too." Richard felt his eyes fill with tears, something that hadn't happened in decades. "It would be an honor to be your daddy, Lily." The girl screamed with joy and jumped from her chair to hug him. "Now we're going to be a real family. Gabriel will be my big brother, you will be my daddy, and Mommy will be Gabriel's mommy too." Gabriel, who had been watching the scene with a nostalgic smile, stepped closer. "Actually, Lily, Carmen has kind of been my mom for months." "Kind of." Carmen raised an eyebrow, pretending to be offended. "Totally," Gabriel corrected, kissing her forehead. "The best mom I could have asked for." Carmen hugged the teenager tightly, whispering in his ear, "And you are the son I never knew I wanted, but always needed." Richard watched his new family embracing around the breakfast table and felt a fullness he had never experienced before. All the business successes, all the awards, all the professional recognition paled in comparison to this simple moment of genuine love. "So," Carmen said as they separated, "we need to talk about the practical details." "What do you mean?" Richard asked. "The wedding. When, where, how, and especially," she hesitated, "about what we will tell people." Reality began to seep into the bubble of happiness. Richard thought of his sister Edna, his business partners, the New York society that followed his professional steps. "What would you like to tell?" he asked. "The truth. That we met when I worked for you, that we fell in love, and that we decided to build a family. And what if some people don't approve?" Carmen looked directly at him. "Richard, if you are worried with what other people will think—" "I'm not," he interrupted firmly. "I just want to make sure you're ready to face some unpleasant comments." "Dad," Lily interjected with the seriousness typical of children, "the teacher always says that people who speak badly of others are sad inside." Gabriel laughed. "Lily is right. Besides, Dad, are you really going to let a bunch of snobs dictate how our family should be?" "Of course not." Richard stood up and walked over to Carmen, taking her hands. "I want to marry you in the most beautiful way possible. I want Gabriel and Lily to be our witnesses. I want everyone to know that you are my family." Carmen smiled, but her eyes revealed a lingering concern. "What about work? I can't be your maid anymore if we're married." "You'll never have to work as a maid again," Richard said. "Remember our talk about going back to education? I was serious about those connections. But I want to work. I want to contribute. And you will, but as an educator, not as a domestic worker." Lily clapped her hands. "Mommy is going to teach other children. How cool!" "Speaking of which," Gabriel added, "I need to tell you something." Everyone turned to him, noticing a different tone in his voice. "What is it, dear?" Carmen asked. "I talked to some friends at school about our family's situation, about you getting married, about Lily becoming my sister, and—" Richard frowned, concerned. "And most of them thought it was amazing. They said they had never seen me so happy." Gabriel smiled. "Some even said they wished they had parents who cared about family happiness as much as you two do." "Really?" Carmen seemed surprised. "Really? The kids my age don't care about the social differences that adults create. They just want to know if I'm happy. And I am." Richard felt a deep relief. If the next generation could see beyond the prejudices that burdened them, perhaps there was hope for real change. "So," he said, "let's start planning this wedding." "Can I help choose Mommy's dress?" Lily asked excitedly. "Of course you can, Princess. And can I be the maid of honor?" "You will be the most beautiful maid of honor in the world," Carmen replied, kissing her daughter's forehead. "And can I be the best man?" Gabriel asked his father. "That would be perfect," Richard confirmed. In the following weeks, the wedding preparations became a family project. Richard insisted on something intimate and elegant, just close family and a few dear friends. Carmen wanted something simple, yet memorable, especially for Lily, who was experiencing her first wedding of someone she loved. The first tension arose when Edward, Richard's brother, learned about the engagement through a tense phone call. "Have you completely lost it, Richard?" Edward's voice echoed through the speakerphone while he was in the office with Carmen and the kids. "Marrying the maid." "Former maid," Richard corrected coldly. "And future wife." "That's ridiculous. What will the clients think? What will society say?" "Honestly, Edward, I don't care." "You don't care? Richard, you built a solid reputation over decades. And now I'm building a solid family." Gabriel gave a thumbs up, while Lily whispered, "Who is that rude lady?" "She's my aunt," Gabriel replied quietly. "She's mad because she can't control my dad's life." "Edward," Richard continued, "I'm marrying Carmen in 2 weeks. You can be there to celebrate our happiness, or you can stay home stewing in your prejudices. The choice is yours." "Richard, at least wait a while. Get married civilly, discreetly, see how things evolve." "No." Richard's voice was categorical. "I'm marrying the woman I love, the way she deserves, with the family we've chosen to build together. End of discussion." The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, Edward sighed deeply. "Fine. If that's what you want, I'll be there. Thank you. But Richard." "Yes?" "I hope you know what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing, Edward. I'm choosing love." After he hung up, Carmen approached him. "Are you sure you don't want to reconsider? A more discreet wedding, perhaps?" "Carmen," Richard held her hands, "you deserve the wedding of your dreams. Lily deserves to see her mother treated like a princess. Gabriel deserves a ceremony he can be proud of, and I deserve to shout to the whole world that I've won the most incredible woman in New York. Even if it complicates your professional life?" "My professional life is just that, professional. My personal life, my family, my happiness, that's what really matters." Lily came closer and held Richard's hand. Daddy Richard. Are we going to have a big party? We're going to have the most beautiful party New York has ever seen, Princess. With a 3-tiered cake, if you want, and with music to dance. All the music you want. And everyone will know that now you are my real daddy. Richard knelt to be at the girl's height. Everyone will know that I'm the luckiest man in the world because I have the most special daughter there is. Lily hugged him tightly. I'm lucky too, Daddy Richard. Gabriel watched the scene and came closer, wrapping everyone in a group hug. We're all lucky, because we finally found our real family. Carmen looked around at the 3 people who had become her whole world, feeling such deep gratitude that it almost hurt. In just a few months, she had gone from a lonely woman struggling to survive to the center of a family that loved her unconditionally. 2 weeks, she whispered. 2 weeks, Richard confirmed, kissing her forehead. And then, forever. And for the first time since the death of her first husband, Carmen Smith completely believed in the possibility of a happy ending. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and sunny, with a breeze. It was a perfect Saturday in May, with pleasant temperatures and a blue sky without a single cloud, as if even nature conspired to make that day special. Lily woke up at 6 in the morning, long before everyone else, and rushed to her mother's room with her hair tousled and her eyes sparkling with excitement. Mom, Mom, it's today that you're going to become Dad Richard's wife. Carmen slowly opened her eyes, still processing reality. After months of preparations, the day had finally arrived. In just a few hours, she would be married to Richard. Lily would officially have a new father, and Gabriel would gain the mother he had always wished for. Good morning, my love, Carmen murmured, pulling Lily onto the bed. Did you sleep well? I couldn't sleep properly. I kept dreaming about white dresses and flowers and giant cakes. Lily snuggled into her mother's arms. Mom, are you nervous? A little, Carmen admitted. And you? I'm happy. Very, very happy. Lily sat up on the bed, suddenly serious. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think my dad in heaven is happy that Dad Richard is going to take care of us now? The question touched Carmen's heart deeply. She had worried about this issue in recent weeks, wondering if she was being disloyal to Anthony's memory. You know what I think, Lily? Carmen chose her words carefully. I think your dad in heaven wants us to be happy, and I think he sent Dad Richard to take care of us, like a guardian angel. Exactly like a guardian angel. Lily beamed. Then today is a day of celebration in heaven too. On the other side of the mansion, Richard was also awake early, but for different reasons. Nervousness, anxiety, and an almost unbearable happiness mixed in his chest as he watched the garden, where in a few hours he would marry the woman who had completely transformed his life. A knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. Dad, can I come in? Of course, Gabriel. The teenager entered wearing jeans and a t-shirt, but carrying the suit he would wear as the best man. How are you feeling? Scared, Richard admitted honestly. And you? Anxious, but happy. Gabriel sat in the armchair near the window. Dad, can I say something serious? Always. Thank you. Richard furrowed his brow. Thank you for what? For fighting for our family, for not giving up when it got tough, for choosing love over fear. Gabriel paused, emotional. For giving me a mom again and a little sister that I adore. Richard moved closer to his son and hugged him tightly. Thank you for teaching me to be a better father and for accepting Carmen and Lily into our lives. As if I had a choice, Gabriel laughed. Lily won my heart on the first day, and Carmen, she made me remember what it's like to have a mum who truly cares. Father and son sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of the changes ahead. "Gabriel," Richard finally said, "after today, we will officially be four. A complete family." "Finally," Gabriel replied with a huge smile. By 9 in the morning, the house had transformed into an organized hive of activity. Marcia, the hairstylist Richard had hired, arrived to style Carmen's and Lily's hair. Soon after, the flowers arrived, simple yet elegant arrangements of white roses and baby's breath that turned the house into an enchanted garden. "Oh my God!" Lily shouted upon seeing the flowers. "It looks like a princess's palace!" Carmen, sitting in the makeshift hairstylist chair in her room, watched her daughter run around the house, admiring every detail of the decoration. Her dress, a simple yet elegant model in natural silk that enhanced her natural beauty, was hanging in the wardrobe, waiting for the final moment. "Mrs. Carmen," Marcia said as she created soft waves in her hair, "Mr. Richard is very lucky. You look radiant." "Thank you. I can't believe it's real." "It is real. And from what I see in this house, he loves you very much." It was true. In the past few days, Richard had gone above and beyond to ensure that every detail was perfect. He hired a violinist for the ceremony, ordered a 3-tier cake, as Lily had requested, and even set up a small light wood altar in the garden near the rosebush, where they had found Lucky months ago. By 11 o'clock, the first guests began to arrive. Edward, Richard's business partner, came with his wife and was genuinely happy for his friend's happiness. Some nearby neighbors, who had grown accustomed to seeing Lily playing in the garden and Carmen tending to the plants, arrived with genuine smiles and simple but thoughtful gifts. Edward arrived promptly at 11:30, wearing an elegant navy blue outfit and a carefully neutral expression. Gabriel greeted her at the door with surprising diplomacy for his 16 years. "Aunt Edward, I'm glad you came." "I wouldn't miss my brother's wedding," she replied, though her tone was formal. "Do you want to meet Lily? She's super excited to meet all of Dad's family." Edward hesitated but nodded. Gabriel led her to the garden, where Lily was helping Richard adjust some flowers on the altar. "Lily," Gabriel called, "come meet my aunt." The girl ran to them with her typical energy, wearing a light pink dress that made her look like a porcelain doll. "Hi, are you Dad?" "Richard's sister?" Lily asked with her characteristic frankness. "I am," Edward replied, clearly disarmed by the child's innocence. "How cool. I always wanted to have an aunt. Will you come here often to play with me?" Despite herself, Edward smiled. "Maybe, yes." "Yay. Can I call you Aunt Du?" "You can." Richard watched from a distance the interaction between his sister and Lily, feeling a deep relief to see that even Edward couldn't resist the genuine charm of the girl. At noon, it was time for Carmen to get dressed. Lily insisted on helping, supervising every detail with the seriousness of a professional wedding planner. "Mommy, you look the most beautiful in the whole wide world," Lily declared when Carmen put on the dress. And she truly did. The simple yet elegant dress accentuated her delicate figure. Her hair, styled in soft waves, framed her radiant face, and the sparkle in her eyes was brighter than any jewel. "Ready?" Richard asked from outside the door. "Come in," Carmen replied. When Richard opened the door and saw her, he was literally breathless. He had imagined this moment hundreds of times, but reality surpassed any fantasy. "You are perfect," he whispered. "You look very handsome too," Carmen replied, admiring the dark grey suit that highlighted his eyes. Lily held both of their hands. "Now, let's go outside so you can really get married." The ceremony was exactly as they had dreamed. Intimate, emotional, and filled with genuine love. The officiant, a friend of Richard's, conducted the ceremony with warmth. Gabriel and Lily served as witnesses, both visibly emotional. When it came time for the vows, Richard held Carmen's hands and spoke with a choked voice. "Carmen, you came into my life when I had forgotten how to be happy. You taught me that building a house is easy, but building a home requires love, patience, and dedication. I promise to love and protect you every day of my life, and I promise to be the best father possible for Lily." Carmen, with tears running down her face, responded, "Richard, you gave me the courage to believe in love again. You welcomed Lily and me into your family without hesitation. I promise to love you, support you, and build together the family we all deserve." "Lily," the officiant said, kneeling to the little girl's height, "do you accept Richard as your new daddy?" "I do," Lily shouted, making everyone laugh. "He's been my heart daddy for a long time." "Gabriel, do you accept Carmen as your new mom?" "I do with all my love," Gabriel replied, his voice choked. When the officiant finally said, "You may kiss," the explosion of joy was audible. Lily clapped vigorously. Gabriel shouted, "Finally!" and even Edward smiled genuinely. The rest of the afternoon passed in a haze of happiness. The cake was cut with Lily helping and getting frosting all over herself. The violinist played songs that made some guests dance in the garden. Photos were taken, stories were shared, and the new Montgomery family was celebrated by all. When night fell and the last guests departed, the four of them sat in the garden, still dressed for the party, gazing at the stars. "So," Richard said, hugging his new wife, "we are officially a family." "The best family in the world," Lily declared sleepily, snuggled in Gabriel's lap. "I agree," Carmen sighed, completely satisfied. "The best family in the world." And under the stars of New York, in a garden scented with roses and illuminated by happiness, the Montgomery family began their new life together, knowing they had found something rare and precious, a love that had overcome all differences and created something more beautiful than any of them had dared to dream. 6 months after the wedding, the Montgomery home had transformed completely, not just physically, although the flowers Carmen had planted in the garden had created a true colorful paradise, and Lily had insisted on painting one wall of her room shocking pink, but energetically. It was impossible to recognize the cold and silent mansion of before in the house filled with laughter, conversation, and life it had become. On a sunny November morning, the day before Lily's 9th birthday, Richard woke up to the smell of coconut kisses being prepared in the kitchen. He went downstairs and found a scene that made him stop at the door to simply observe. Carmen was teaching Gabriel how to make Lily's favorite dessert, while the birthday girl herself was directing the operation from atop a stool. "No, Gabriel, you have to fold the coconut like this, or it won't turn out right." Lily gestured with her little hands covered in dough. "Mommy taught me the right way." "Sorry, Teacher Lily," Gabriel laughed, patiently following his sister's instructions. "Is this better?" "Much better. You're learning." Carmen watched the interaction with shining eyes of pride. In recent months, she had witnessed Gabriel transform into the most dedicated brother a child could have, and Lily flourish under the attention and protection of her older brother. "Good morning, family," Richard said, coming over to kiss his wife and ruffle the children's hair. "Daddy!" Lily threw herself into his arms, leaving flower prints on his work shirt. "We're making coconut kisses for my party tomorrow. Gabriel is being my helper." "How lucky you are to have such a competent helper," Richard replied, winking at his son. "And how lucky we are to have such a demanding boss," Gabriel shot back, teasing Lily into making a face at him. Carmen approached and adjusted her husband's tie. "Do you have an early meeting today?" "I do, but I'll try to come back early. I want to help with the final preparations for the party." "Daddy, do you remember I invited my whole class from school?" Lily asked, her big eyes fixed on him. "I remember, Princess. 17 kids plus the parents who want to come. And do you remember that Sophia is allergic to chocolate?" "I remember. That's why your mom made special brigadeiros without chocolate for her." And do you remember that Miguel is a bit shy and might need help playing with the others? Richard knelt to be at his daughter's height, admiring her genuine concern for her friends. I remember everything, Lily. I'll help Miguel feel included, okay? You're the best daddy in the world, Lily declared, hugging him tightly. Those simple words still had the power to deeply move Richard. In recent months, he had discovered a completely new kind of fatherhood with Lily, more present, more attentive, more emotionally involved than he had ever managed before. Richard remembered being with Gabriel when he was little. Gabriel, Richard turned to his son, are you coming with me to the office today? I want to show you the project for the new school we are building. School? Gabriel raised an eyebrow. Remember we talked about the educational foundation? We started building the first unit. It will have a library, laboratories, specialized classrooms, and it will need a very competent educational coordinator. Carmen stopped kneading the dough and looked at her husband. Richard, what? Do you think about visiting the site today? See if it meets your expectations. Carmen's eyes filled with tears. Since their marriage, Richard had been quietly working to create real opportunities for her to return to the work she loved, always respectfully, waiting for the right moment. Did you really do this? We did this. The Lily Gabriel Montgomery Foundation for Inclusive Education will be a reality in March. Lily Gabriel Foundation, Lily shouted. Does it have my name? And mine, Gabriel asked, equally surprised. You both taught me that education transforms lives, Richard explained. Lily showed me how to be brave and honest. Gabriel taught me that it's never too late to be a better dad. The foundation will help children like you have the opportunities they deserve. Lily jumped off the stool and ran to hug Richard again. Now other kids will be able to learn from Mom too. Exactly. Gabriel stepped closer and placed his hand on his father's shoulder. Thank you for doing this, for valuing what Carmen loves to do. Thank you for teaching me that true success is measured by the happiness of the people we love. Carmen joined the family hug, feeling a gratitude so deep it almost hurt. You three have completely changed my life. We changed each other's lives, Richard corrected, and we keep changing every day. Later that day, while visiting the land where the school was being built, Carmen walked among the structures under construction with Lily running ahead, exploring every corner, and Gabriel asking intelligent questions about the architectural design. Will there be a big library? Lily asked, jumping over a pile of bricks. Huge, Richard confirmed, with books in English and Spanish, and a special section for regional literature. Carmen stopped abruptly. Regional literature? In honor of your roots, and the stories you tell Lily every night. Dad, Gabriel said thoughtfully, can I suggest something? Of course. How about creating an exchange program? Bring kids from the South to visit New York and take kids from here to see the South, so they understand that America is much more diverse than they imagine. Richard looked at his son with immense pride. That's a brilliant idea. What do you think, Carmen? I think Anthony would be proud, she replied, her voice choked. He always dreamed of connecting cultures through education. Lily, who had been listening to the conversation, approached her mother. Mom, are you thinking about my first dad? I am, my love. Do you think he likes Dad, Richard? Carmen looked at Richard, who awaited the answer with gentle curiosity rather than jealousy. I think he is very happy because you have a family that loves you so much. And because he sent Dad Richard to take care of us, Lily added with the simple logic of children. Exactly. The following night, Lily's birthday party was an absolute success. The garden filled with children running, parents chatting, and laughter echoing throughout the property. Richard found himself in the unusual role of children's party entertainer, organizing games and ensuring every child felt included. Carmen watched from afar, dressed in a light blue dress that Richard had bought for her. Seeing her daughter radiant with happiness surrounded by friends, her stepson helping the younger kids with infinite patience, and her husband genuinely enjoying the childlike joy around him. "Mrs. Montgomery," Edward approached, using the title with a respect he hadn't had months ago, "may I say that your daughter is delightful?" "Thank you, Edward. That's very kind of you. And may I also say that my brother is unrecognizable, in the best possible way?" Carmen smiled. "He has always been a good man. He just needed to remember that. You helped him remember, you and Lily." Edward paused. "I apologize for the comments I made before. I was wrong." "You don't need to apologize. I understand it was hard to accept such big changes." "It wasn't hard to accept the changes," Edward corrected. "It was hard to accept that I was wrong about what really matters in life." The two women watched Lily blow out the candles on the three-tiered cake, surrounded by all the people she loved, her eyes shining with pure joy. "What did she wish for?" Edward asked. "For our family to always be together," Carmen replied, "and for all the children in the world to have a family that loves them as hers loves her." Edward smiled genuinely. "Your wish already came true then." Later that night, after all the guests had gone home and Lily had finally fallen asleep, exhausted but happy, Richard, Carmen, and Gabriel sat on the porch, gazing at the stars. "Gabriel," Carmen said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Are you happy, really happy?" Gabriel looked at the woman who had become his mother in every way that mattered. "Mom, a year ago I was a rebellious and lonely teenager. Today I have a complete family, a little sister I adore, a dad who actually cares about me, and a mom who loves me unconditionally. How could I not be happy?" "And you?" Richard asked his wife. "Any regrets?" Carmen looked around, at the home that had become her haven, at the man who had become her safe haven, at the son who had won her heart completely. "My only regret," she said thoughtfully, "is taking so long to believe that I deserve to be happy. And now do you believe? Now I know that happiness is not something we deserve or don't. It's something we choose to build every day with the people we love." Richard took her hand and kissed it gently. "Forever started today then. Forever began the day a brave girl stood up for her mom over a broken glass," Carmen corrected with a smile. "Forever started when we stopped being afraid to love," Gabriel added wisely. In the next room, Lily slept peacefully, hugging a teddy bear that Gabriel had given her, dreaming of a family that loved her unconditionally and a future full of infinite possibilities. And in the home that had become a true haven, 4 people who had found each other against all odds settled into the quiet contentment of a love that had overcome social differences, personal fears, and others' expectations to create something pure, genuine, and eternal. Outside, New York continued its frantic pace, but inside the Montgomery home, time moved at the pace of love. Sometimes urgent, sometimes patient, always present, always real. A family had been born not from blood, but from choice. Not from convenience, but from courage. Not from necessity, but from the simple revolutionary decision to love without reservations and build happiness one day at a time.